Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I know that there are other city council members in the building joining us, but for the sake of time, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Roll call, Clerk Doyle.
Carrington, Goodman, James,
Here.
McGinnis,
Here.
Nicholson,
Here.
Parker,
Here.
Rutherford. Mr. President, you have a quorum.
All right, quorum being established, and since I haven't heard from any council member asking or letting me know that they won't be here, I'm not going to move to excuse. Is there a motion to approve this evening's agenda?
So moved. Support.
Moved by Councilman Parker, second by Councilman Nicholson. Hearing no debate, no amendments. Roll call on adoption of the agenda, Clerk Doyle.
James,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Nicholson,
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
4 yeas, no nays.
All right, that motion carries. We'll proceed accordingly. So, Deputy Mayor Stevens, we've got Department of Public Works up first.
All right, thank you. The Department of Public Works Director is here, and as we have done with all of our other presentations, he will go through a rundown of what has happened in the department, what he is expecting to do next year, and then we will speak on the specific line items.
Good evening, Council.
Good evening.
As Deputy Mayor said, I'll go through this budget presentation with you. We'll start off with the organizational chart. Within the department, you'll see we still have several vacancies that we're working hard to fill. And then the positions that are listed in red there are the new positions that we're requesting for this budget season for the next fiscal year. And then this is the remaining of it. What I didn't say on the other pages, we're looking for a director's aide to assist with my scheduling and different issues along those lines that I've been currently having. And then along this page, you'll see we're asking for 2 mechanics that will work on doing the light maintenance, light to medium maintenance on the vehicles, lawnmowers, et cetera. We have a lot of downtime in shops when we send the trucks out for repairs that could be done in-house, or we're taking one of the foremen off the street from his actual work duties or plow duties for the foreman to do the repairs. And it's causing us a lot of downtime. A couple of the other positions we're looking to add another laborer 2 and another laborer 1, and then a building laborer as well.
Any questions, just really briefly, since we're fresh on the organizational chart? Any questions on the organizational chart for the Department of Public Works? Councilman Rutherford?
Yes, good afternoon. Mr. Cooley, have you solved the issue with Vince and Larry by adding another person to work with them? We talked about it in building and facilities 2 months ago. Is that displayed on that chart?
Do I hit the other side, Ken, to back up? Yes. As you can see, we have a vacant building foreman, and that Larry is working with Delia to build the job description and get that posted out on the street so that we can fill that building foreman position. At that point, we would work on, there's a good possibility that Mr. Stevens would be the one that we would choose for that foreman, depending on applicants. But then we would work on filling the labor position, and then we're currently asking for another one to increase their staff load.
Okay, and my only follow-up with that would be, do we have a direct timeline? Because you guys have been talking about building this for the last 3 months, and yet
Yes, I don't have a direct timeline, but I can get you one. I need to follow up with Larry and Delia and see where they're at within building this job description. They've been working on it for a little bit now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilman Nicholson?
The variance is quite steep. I'm wondering, is the addition of new staff to get rid of contracts, or what? Are we, with the addition of the new staffs, are we looking at not having some outside?
So the addition of the 2 labor staff will increase our ability to do the work that we're currently doing and have some extra people to do a couple of extra items that we're being asked currently. But the way we had a pretty tight list of employees last year when we did this expansion. So the workload that they're doing now, once we get into full mow season or full sweep season, it's going to take us away from being able to do the one-off jobs that we need to do here and there.
So I guess my question, though, is about, in labor, we're looking at additions, but are we looking at subtractions and contracted work? Like, will these people replace, just because the overall budget is quite a reduction?
I'm not under, you're saying there's
So
a.
your fund balance, based on last year is, almost, and the council requested budget is almost a $500,000 deduction. Is this, I mean, typically that comes out of salary and wages. We're looking at adding people, so I'm wondering if this will get rid of contracted work.
So DPW is unfortunately an overly complex budget to look at. And so we can't just look at the 101 appropriation. We have to look across all of the appropriations.
So my
Yes.
request then, Deputy Mayor, is in future iterations of this budget, just like we had in the last finance, or in the last budget hearing, that last column, the percentage variance, this one it didn't break out just because I think the descriptions are probably a little bit long. That's super important. I think we would like to see less of the description, maybe more of that next column.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Anything else on the organizational chart?
Just so I'm clear, Deputy Director Cooley, is one person enough to help Larry and them to deal with the facilities and building and facilities, or is there, if you had a wish list, what would you ask for more? And the reason why I ask is because that's a lot already on Mr. Stevens and on Larry, and then adding one more will help. But we have so many other things that have to be done in the building and facilities that we actually run, like Oak Hill, or excuse me, not Oak Hill, the other buildings that we are in charge of. So I'm just trying to make sure, is the one going to be sufficient to be able to circumvent what they've been having to do?
Yeah, so what our plan was is to try to expand to this one position, see how things leveled out with having a foreman in the two building maintenance positions. There's still a lot of that work that is contracted out that we can't do in-house, just based off of tool-wise, different items like that has to be done by contractors. So our plan was to bring in the second building laborer, have the addition of the foreman, and then evaluate that over the time. And if we need to come back for a budget amendment to add a position during next fiscal year, we would. If not, we would wait till the following fiscal year to ask for another person.
All right, thank you.
Councilman Parker.
Thank you, Brother President. A couple of questions. One is, I know as I look at, well, I was looking in your janitorial area, you only have the one person, but I know we've hired a whole bunch of more people that are working in this building. And I know I asked this, matter of fact, we budgeted at least a half FTE for the increase in staffing that we were going to have. And so my question is, have we filled that position? And if not, are we planning on hiring a person? Because as I look at the building, and it is our city hall, it looks kind of worn.
So currently, we have 3 staff members cleaning between the 2 buildings here in Sheriff's Building. One of those staff members are actually one of the labor ones from the field. We brought them in from the field, and they've been doing labor work. That's the gentleman you're seeing walking around. Right now, we have an RFP out, and we got bids back. Larry and John Marsh of the purchasing department are actively interviewing the companies. Our plan is to keep the 2 employees that are listed there, and they will be the janitorial staff for City Hall. And then the rest of the buildings will be contracted out. Will be contracted services for the remainder of the buildings. We did a cost estimate on bringing the cost in-house versus using a contracted company, and we couldn't justify bringing staff in to do the cleaning for all the buildings with the same pricing that we're getting back on our bids.
Who supervises our janitors?
Larry Robinson, our building superintendent.
Okay, thank you.
Hearing no further questions on the organizational chart,
Oh,
please proceed.
one more question.
Councilman Parker.
As I've asked with all of these that I've seen, is can we get a copy of the presentation that you guys do at this so we can put it in the book with the budget?
So the short answer is yes. The long answer is they actually have all been uploaded to a digital file that you can access, but you want them to print them out and give them to the clerk?
If I can get access, I can print
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
Thank you.
Please proceed.
So the mission statement of the DPW is to provide the city of Pontiac with the highest quality public infrastructure possible. That includes transportation, sanitation, buildings, water, sewer, and stormwater. Some of the highlights from the 22-23 fiscal year, we brought in-house snow operations of all major and local streets back. That includes the city-owned buildings. That was not originally in the plan, but we had some issues with the contractor, and we handled all snow operations ourselves in-house this year. So we plowed all the buildings, shoveled the sidewalks, and then maintained all the major and local streets as well. One of the other highlights is the building staff worked along with some of the DPW field staff, and we've opened up approximately 3,000 square foot of usable space within City Hall that is now office space that can actually handle people and be habitable for an office space and work environment. We're in the process, and the majority of this contract will be done with this fiscal year, and it's the preservation repairs done to major roads, which are Baldwin, Joslin, East Beverly, the Telegraph Extension, Elizabeth Lake Road, and that also includes the repaving of West Columbia this fiscal year as well. The paving of local roads, Bynum, Gambrell, Granada, Granville, and Oliver. The patching services done in-house for the majority of 22-23 fiscal year. The council had approved us getting a contractor to assist with that, and there was a lot of language details that need to be worked out. That contract took an extended amount of time. So the majority of the patching that's been done over the past fiscal year has been done by our in-house staff. They've done approximately 395 tons of coal patch, which would approximately fill 18,000 potholes, 130 tons of hot mix, approximately 6,000 potholes with that tonnage. We've hired 12 additional DPW staff members, and we're still hiring for the vacant positions that are open. One of the positions was an in-house GIS technician, and she's worked hard to improve some mapping of city-owned properties, different items like that in our asset management program, which has been a great help to have that in-house. And then the purchase and the operation of our mowing services for city-owned properties, and we did take possession of those mowers this week, and we are currently actively cutting the parks this week to try to get those all taken care of.
Congratulations on those milestones. On the paving of local roads, should we expect in this fiscal year Hazel off of
Yes, and
Telegraph?
that's on one of our,
Oh, okay.
our goals.
Councilwoman?
Yes, so Earl Moore, what would be the update for the engagement of potholes? Because those big potholes still haven't been filled, and it continues to be an issue for my district.
I will check Earl Moore. It was on the list, and I need to find out where it's at on the list and why it hasn't been done yet. But I know it was added to the list, and they're about a week and a half behind patching right now. So when we add it to the list, it takes about a week and a half to 2 weeks to get to it.
And first of all, thanks for doing the 18,000 potholes. I think that needs to be highlighted and sit on the e-blast so people can say we actually are filling the holes. You need to highlight what you guys are doing. The other thing that I want to thank you for is with the vacant slots, you know how with the vacant slots that you guys have, are we reaching out to third parties to try to find these positions to be full faster because of the summertime and the upkeep and the up-tempo of the work you're going to do? I just want to make sure that we're not leaving ourselves to just waiting on Indeed and things of that nature. And so are we using other things to make sure that that goes on the time? Or is that an HR question?
I believe that'd be an HR question. I know they have used it for some of our positions in the past, but I don't know if they're currently using it for all the positions we have open.
Okay, then I just have one more, I'm sorry. In-house GS technician improving mapping and assessment. This is a question for the administration. Does this include all of the lots that the city owns, that she's a part of, that she's going to be doing that? And if so, when is that information going to get out?
So, yes, and what she was able to do, and I'll try to be brief, the map that we had when we got from Oakland County, and that map was incorrect. It actually had incorrect data put into it. Mostly it was just typos. She was able to go through, correct all those typos, create a new map that actually showed all of the properties that the city owned. We used that map to determine if there were areas in the city that had clusters of properties to say, even though the person next door is saying they want to buy this property, we own so many properties in this area, it is more advantageous for us to hold on to all of the properties in this area and talk to a developer to get an infill project done as opposed to just sending it to the person next door. But again, as I said, over the course of this past week, we actually had some help that we were able to get to take her maps and highlight where all of the individuals were so that in the next week or two, we can actually give council a recommendation to say, these are the properties we suggest that you go ahead and sell to the next door neighbors.
Hearing no further questions, please proceed.
So to move on to the next slide, this is our 23-24 fiscal year goals. We want to fill the engineering department to improve our engineering services. Those positions were approved with last year's budget, and they still have not been filled. So our process now, we were looking for a city engineer to try to fill all of those positions from the top down. Now that we're using a contract engineer, we're going to work with her and start filling the positions from the bottom up. Possibly we can get some people in here, get them some experience, and maybe we can pull a city engineer out of some in-house candidates once we get them in here and get some experience. The GIS technician is working to improve our asset management program so that we have the ability to graph our workloads and to also graph the accomplishments that we had so that we can get that out to the public and they can see the type of work that we're doing at the department level. Also is the completion of the paving of Hazel Street and portions of Ottawa Park. We had hoped to have those done this fiscal year, but it's just not working out. We're going to have City Hall done this year, but we will have to move Hazel into it'll probably start either late June or early July and be paved right after that. And the same with Ottawa Park. They'll be working on both of those at the same time. Some of the other paving is the paving of Franklin Road from the city limits on the south end to Rapid Street, and then Orchard Lake Road from Old Telegraph to just west of Voorhees where the concrete ends there. And that also includes the replacement of the bridge over the Clinton River. Work will start on Golf and Bagley Drive. You'll see a lot of utility work start there first, and then it'll move into the actual reconstruction of Bagley Drive and the paving of Golf Drive. Our engineer that we currently have is working hard on a roads master plan to bring our PACER rating. So she's working on a master plan to help us come up with a plan to raise the PACER rating to an above average rating for the city roads. And this will include future maintenance plan to go along with the actual paving plan so that we can keep the roads into an above average rating at all times. We're working to get some grant money for a tree survey to survey all the trees in the right of way and the city-owned property. This survey will detail conditions, types, different things of all the trees within the city that the city owns. And then we're working to complete the building assessments and finalize repair and improvement plans for all the city-owned buildings.
Councilman Rutherford.
What's the actual start date for Golf Drive and Bagley, and also what's the actual start date from Franklin to Orchard Lake?
Excuse me. Franklin Road is a July bid letting, which will start work sometime, most likely late August, and that work will be done before the end of the asphalt season, which is typically mid-November, is when they close down the asphalt plants. That's the anticipation for that. Golf and Bagley will be, I just had that date in my head. I believe that bid letting will go out late fall, and you'll start to see the water main and the sewer work done through the winter and into spring before we can start doing any road repairs next spring.
And my follow-up just to that is that when those things are coming, can we make sure that the community is made aware of it in enough time so that we have alternative routes and we know that they are informed on when it's going to actually start?
Yes, and what will happen is all the residents around that Franklin corridor will get letters 2 or 3 weeks prior to the start of Franklin Road construction. And Franklin Road construction, there's not any planned closures, so it'll be some lane closures, so the traffic will increase, but there will still be access to the roadways. You'll still be able to get up and down the roadway while that construction is happening. The Orchard Lake one will get probably so the beginning work will be lane closures as well out there, but that there eventually has to be a full shutdown in order to do the bridge repair, and that'll go out to notify the residents in the area. They'll have signboards out there that'll state that Orchard Lake Road's going to be closed for approximately 30 days while they do that bridge work.
All right, thank you so much.
Councilman Parker? Microphone.
Director Cooley, I certainly appreciate all that you've given here, but can I just, you're looking at this budget, is there any plan in the next year and a half, 2 years to do any projects in the District 5?
So
Paving projects?
So currently, the local road budget doesn't allow us to do any work in the local roads. It's, the last of the local road dollars are going towards Hazel, to pave Hazel. But that's what that roads master plan is to come up with a plan to actively pave roads in every district and come up with a means to pay for that as well. So that's what that master plan is going to do, is give us a broad perspective of getting roads throughout the entire city taken care of.
Councilman Nicholson?
Want to make sure the 30-day closure on Orchard Lake Road that we addressed, clearly Voorhees is going to be a main thoroughfare, and it's in really terrible shape. I just want to make sure that we prior till and keep watch on those potholes. Want to get the hot patch in there before too long, because it's going to be, we're going to have a lot of heavier trucks heading down that way if it's going to be closed for 30 days.
Okay, that's noted, and it definitely will be a priority for us.
If there are no further questions, please proceed.
Okay, the major changes are, as I talked about during the org chart, is the addition to staff, including a director's aide, building labor, 2 highway laborers, and 2 mechanics. And then also for DPW to move in a suitable location to house DPW at a single location. It's something we're actively working strongly on, and we want to make sure that we can accomplish that in the next fiscal year. And that completes my presentation for the budget.
Deputy Mayor?
Director Cooley, can you please also just address what we spoke about earlier today concerning the forthcoming budget amendment for the year that we are currently in, and how that ties to the projections for this year that we are discussing tonight?
So if you're looking at the major roads budget line items, the 202 line items, you'll see that we projected to spend close to $10 million this year, and that projection is not, we're not going to make that projection. So in order for us to budget these dollars for the 23-24 fiscal year, you'll see coming on the June 6th council meeting, there will be a budget amendment to amend the amount of dollars that are going to be spent within this fiscal year of the major road fund to allow that to go back into fund balance so that we can reallocate them for the next 23-24 fiscal year.
Councilman Rutherford?
So there was a slide I was trying to get a question about the, for the DPW, for the final acquisition of where you guys are gonna be permanently housed. Where are we at with that? What's the actual date and timeline on which this will occur? I yield to the Deputy Mayor Stevens.
Thank you, Councilwoman. There is not yet a date. We do continue to look at several facilities. There is one facility that is our leading option. And so we have sent a letter of interest to that particular facility. We did hear back from another governmental entity that they were not willing to sell us some surplus property that they had. The building that we are currently in, as you know, we amended our lease with the Boston Corporation, so we obviously have that available to us for a year, but it is strongly our intent to, at the very least, get a salt dome acquired this year so that we can have, so that we don't have to keep our salt trucks inside, or to have an inside building to keep our salt trucks in. One of the two we want to have done before the end of this, or before the beginning of this winter season, and we continue to work diligently on that, but we just don't have a final location tied down as yet.
So I want to just make sure I got this right. When we were in our subcommittees, you told me something differently, meaning that I was under the assumption that we had did the proper steps to see if we were going to buy the building. So now we back to square one. That's correct.
So I would not say that we are back to square one. There have always been a number of facilities that we have been looking at. We have one facility that is our front runner facility because it is a turnkey facility for us. We literally can move in tomorrow with maybe, like, literally, we would not even have to paint. So that is our primary option. We do have two other buildings that we are looking at and considering. They would require substantially more work than that first building, and we just haven't gotten to a point with any of the three buildings where I can come to council and say, we would like council to appropriate X number of dollars to move into this building. We are still doing our due diligence to work with our real estate agent to actually come to an agreement on what is the right price for the properties, and to actually get the property owners to a point where they agree with us on that price. And as I said, our long shot option was to get some property from another governmental entity that came back and said they just were not interested.
And this will be just one more question for Mr. Cooley, so that I'm clear. I'll just ask it in our committee tomorrow. I don't want to go there. I'll ask tomorrow.
Councilman Nicholson, followed by Councilwoman James.
I'm wondering of just process and procedural question. I know that you mentioned earlier with DPW, it's just such a complex budget scenario where things fit. Between the recommended budget and the requested budget, there's a tremendous amount of cuts. So I picked a couple that I would mention individually, but I just think there's probably something overall that you could address.
Absolutely. So as council knows, we were without a city engineer for a year now, more than a year.
Yeah, it's,
The
yeah,
entirety
probably
of this,
13 months.
the entirety of this fiscal year, we were without a city engineer. The vast majority of this fiscal year, we were without a finance director. And so the recommended budget that was turned in on May 1st, in order to make that budget work, what the finance director did was he said, okay, look, you are not allowed to ask for a budget that is imbalanced, right? And so in order to bring it into balance and not having an engineer to speak with to ask, as Director Cooley said, that there is over $4 million of budget amendment of money that's not going to be spent, the finance director said, look, as far as I know, all of that money is going to be spent. So in order to make next year's budget work, these are all of the cuts that need to be made in order for that to happen. The budget that you have been given tonight, now that we have a city engineer on staff, and now that we have a finance director who can work with the DPW director, we were able to say, all right, here's all of the money that we know is not going to be spent, which allows you to rebalance and look at a more correct projection of budget.
So this will be taken care of in the budget amendment, moving things that were unspent from this year, moving them back into fund balance for the current, the coming
Yes,
fiscal
Councilman.
year. Okay, thank you. Yeah, there were just some things that really, struck me. So we get closer to the right number, plus we'll be adding in those additional funds. That makes me more comfortable. Thank you.
Correct, and that's why I'm not sure exactly when you got these, but I was trying to get these to you as soon as possible so that you could see and hopefully, have that difference. And that's why I specifically wanted to bring it to your attention that there is a variance, and that is why there's a variance.
Understood, thank you.
Councilwoman James.
Yes, I've got a question about your statement a few minutes ago about the 10 million that was projected for, was it roads?
For the major roads,
For
correct.
major roads, and you said that we're not gonna make that projection, and so there's gonna be some kind of an adjustment asked for or budget request. I didn't really follow the statement after that, so could you
So-
kind of go over that again?
Yeah, so as the deputy mayor was just talking about, we allocated $10 million within the major road fund, which is a 202 fund, going through this fiscal year with employees that weren't hired on, different items, like it was a lighter snow year, so we didn't use as much money as we had thought we were going to use for salting. So when you go through the line items and look at them, the work that we did, or the dollars that we didn't spend money in by doing the work, is going to go back to the fund balance to be able to allocate into next year's fund, to be able to allocate those dollars for next year's work. And what we have to do is a budget amendment to come back to council to reallocate what was done last year to lower the dollar amounts and allow those monies to go back into the fund balance.
Other discussion? Councilman
One
Parker?
last question. I noticed that in some of the accounts you have equipment rental city-owned. What exactly is the
So-
city renting? What is we renting from ourselves?
So what that is MDOT has a Schedule C rate. So when you use a vehicle, there's a Schedule C rate that you are allowed to bill for that vehicle being used within the different funds. So what that line item is as our employees are doing work in the different funds, we bill for the vehicles and the equipment they're using, and that monies go back into what should be an equipment fund that is a revolving fund, so that we use them dollars to purchase the new equipment as this equipment depreciates. And that's all something that now that there's a new finance director, we'll be working on rebuilding that equipment fund. Currently, those dollars go back into the general fund, I believe.
And so we're expecting a overage of 80,000, at least in this account, on, I guess it's 101-447-943-000. I think that's where it is, 80,000. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. So, one of the things that I learned in business school is that depreciation is a non-cash expense. And so when I was a business development manager helping small businesses, and they would tell me depreciation is a non-cash expense, and I get to take it off of my taxes and blah, 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 I say, no. The purpose of depreciation is that all of that non-cash expense, you're supposed to take that cash and set it in a separate account so that you can rebuy the asset once the asset has lived its useful life. This is us actually putting that into effect. So we have set aside cash in that line item to repurchase our assets once they have died.
Thank you. Further discussion and questions for Public Works? The general fund, building maintenance, drains, engineering, street lighting, Public Works, winter maintenance, major streets.
I did have a question
Councilman Parker.
concerning looking at it, and I haven't really skimmed it that good, but I noticed that we didn't, let's see, the lighting. Let's see, let me get back to it. Street lighting. We didn't budget anything for street lighting this year?
Yes, the street lighting falls within the 202 fund. And I believe there's, for normal maintenance work, there's $150,000 within the major road fund to work on the general maintenance. There's also some capital improvement dollars to, what our plan is to do some replacement of poles. And then, as council heard at a presentation at one of the council meetings, we did get a SEMCOG grant for, I believe it was in the $1.2 million range, to be able to go in and replace all of our antiquated light bulbs with new LED lights, which will make the street lights brighter.
Great answer, thank you, sir.
Councilman Rutherford?
I just wanted to make sure that he asked about street lights, but I wanted to ask specifically about lights. When you turn into the Washington Park area, just to get, they're going out at night, so I just need somebody to be sent out there to check on that light. When you come into the subdivision and you go to Argyle, the light is not turning on over there, and I need to
So
know.
heading into Washington Park, there's
Yes.
lights out. Okay, I'll take a look at it because that's DTE maintenance, and I'll get that sent over to them.
Thank you so much.
Sorry. Any further discussion? Councilwoman James.
202 is not in our package. I don't see it. Can you? is
There
that-
was a couple of different, I think they come in
is it
two
under
different
general- Is it under?
items. One was
101 package?
special.
There's pages 1 through 10. Councilman Nicholson?
Deputy Mayor, if we could, I wonder if we could get an update on how, when we have those fund balance transfers, could we get an updated copy of what this will look like? Just so that way when we're making our amendments, we know where to place those and not to.
Yes.
Thank you. Do you have any idea how quickly we could get those? Just because I know we're all working on individual amendments and I don't want to bring something forward if we know there's going to be dollars that fall in that.
So we've already started putting all of that together, so I hope that we can have that at, obviously Monday is a holiday, but Tuesday or Wednesday of next week?
I directed our senior accountant to start doing that when he came back working Tuesday.
Thank you, Director.
Further discussion? Public Works going once? I'm sorry, Pro Tem.
Just a quick question concerning streetlight repair. So you requested an induction by 50,000. So basically, that grant would actually help in assisting with the streetlight repair, I'm assuming.
Correct. That grant will save us from replacing a lot of the bulbs, which gets costly.
All right, thank you.
Is there a massive backlog in terms of like reported missing streetlights that DTE needs to still do or contracted entities still need to do?
I would have to talk to the right-of-way inspector. He's the one handling the contract right now with the street lighting, but I believe most of the stuff that's being repaired by our contractor is pretty close to being caught up. I think there's a couple of big sections that are out there. We're waiting for the boring contractor to come in and bore new conduit and pull new wire for. But I think the majority of our streetlights are working. And then DTE streetlights, we report those as they come in from residents within the local streets.
Cesar Chavez, who would that be?
That would be
State?
us.
Us, okay.
Is there an issue with it? Is that out?
There's just some that are missing still.
Okay.
So I'll just resubmit them.
Yeah,
Councilman Nicholson?
Temporary stop signs. So there've been a number of power outages and things like that. Downtown, we had a power outage for a day and a half, and the really kind of terrifying situation at 59 in Saginaw. Do we have temporary, I don't know what sort of equipment you would need to place a temporary four-way stop
Yeah.
out? But there's also several, we're working on a sign audit right now in my district, but some that have been hit, some that have just fallen off, where the stake is still there, the sign is gone, some, the whole thing is gone, but those just seem to be so important and immediate. I'm wondering if there's even a way for, if DPW's not here, that they could be kept somewhere here, so that way if one of us needed to go out and temporarily place one, just because the proximity we are to City Hall.
so typically we prioritize those, and if we get a notification that there's a stop sign down, we will bring a crew in to go replace that sign. Currently, we have about, I believe we're 15 to 18 temporary signs that we have, and they're actually out at locations. Those signs are actively being replaced so that we'll take those temporary signs back in. There was quite a bit of delay in us getting the sign contract signed, so those signs have been out for a while. But once those new signs are installed, we'll have, like I say, up to about 18. We do keep some here at City Hall so that they're close. There's a few around back there typically, and then the rest of them are at our Joslin Road location. But typically, something like Huron and Saginaw, that's an MDOT road along with our road. and road commission would typically set those out if they're notified, so I don't know why they didn't put any out that time.
Yeah, so my question though is at the just that it's temporary, is it on some sort of stand?
Yeah,
Is it- okay.
it's on a stand with legs, and then the legs go out enough that you can lay sandbags on them so they won't blow over. And they're set at the location. They're a little shorter than the typical stop sign, just to make it easier to maneuver them within the bed of the trucks. But yeah, they are on a temporary
In
stand.
District Two, we're still waiting. There's a stop sign out on West Iroquois, I believe at West Iroquois and Menominee, which is a pretty heavy traffic area in the
I
neighborhood.
believe that was on the list of the replacements that are happening now, but I will check.
And then one off of Stout Street as well.
I'm sorry,
One on Stout, it's, the
Stout.
sign is just missing from the post. The post is there. But there's also a tree that would block it if you put the stop sign back up. Nobody would see it anyway, but, it's a, main turnoff off of Orchard Lake Road, so I just wanted to flag those as well.
Okay.
Councilman James?
Yes, 2 questions under contractual mowing services. With the Elam, you don't have anything for 2023-24. With the Elam contract that we approved on Tuesday night, wouldn't that be under there?
So most of Elam's contract is going to come through code enforcement. That's where a lot of his mowing will be.
Okay.
Since we are doing our mowing in-house, that's why you don't see nothing under contracted services in any of our funds any longer. It was in the road funds, it was in the parks fund, those items. But since we purchased the mowers, we didn't put anything back in there for contractual mowing.
Okay, great. Second question, where would the sidewalk, the contract for the sidewalk sawing?
That is, it's within the 202 and the 203 numbers, but it's at the very top under non-motorized.
Did we increase that for this fiscal year?
I will have to look at it. I believe we did, but I think we had to scale it back because of the amount of construction on the major roads that we were doing. But I'll take a look at that and see. But I believe the numbers are matching what last year's numbers were,
Okay.
which I believe is 50,000 within major roads and 100,000 within local roads.
Any further, Councilwoman?
Well, and we're still mainly using that for the areas that the sidewalk contractor is working on. We're not, right now, we're not allowing them to work in other districts.
Correct.
To
Currently, they are just going ahead of our CDBG contractor to extend those CDBG dollars. But as we move into different programs, they're going to be expanding throughout the city doing that work. When council approved that contract with the directional cutting, it was a 3-year contract.
Okay. Well, it's one that I think I would love to see us expand it somewhat, because we all have these nightmare sidewalks in our districts, and it would be great this is a really, really cost-effective way to resolve these issues, and it would be good to get a little more money into that, into that program, so that we can begin to handle some of these really bad sidewalk issues across the districts.
Okay.
So,
Pro Tem Carrington?
Yes, thank you, President McGinnis. The GL account, street sign contract, have we done an assessment of how many street signs that we needed throughout the city of Pontiac? Because I know in my district, I can drive through and I totally get lost because no street signs are up in various.
There hasn't been a full citywide assessment done. There was a small assessment done, and we're evaluating the cost of what that assessment was by an outside engineering firm to see if that's something that our GIS technician can work with one of our right-of-way inspectors and go out and do that same work at a more reasonable cost. So that evaluation's happening currently with the new city engineer that we have working. But we do know that's a top priority, is to get the signs replaced within the city, because it's an ongoing problem within all 7 districts, that there's a lot of not only signs that are missing, but signs that are worn and faded that need to be replaced, or signs that are just obsolete and need to be taken out.
So your requested budget is $150,000.
So that's the money that the actual contractor, that would be the replacement contractor, the dollars would come out of wages if we're going to do it in-house. If not, then it would come out of engineering services, is what would do to do the plan to get ready for it. And then once we figure out the costs, then we would have to come back and do a budget amendment if it's not within the dollars of the sign replacement costs we're asking for now.
And my follow-up question, I'm gonna take a page out of Councilwoman Relaford's book about, asking about when, time-wise, when can we see this happening?
So our top priority right now is this master roads plan. We need to have that in place by August, and once that plan is done, we'll have that engineer working on that very strongly to get that sign contract, or that sign evaluation done.
All right, thank you.
What would be the fund, applicable fund for work essentially handling sinkholes? Is that would be considered like a patching situation? So for example, what's already was done this current fiscal year at South Ardmore and Chandler, where at the intersection, there's deterioration happening in the middle. In recent weeks, I was at South Shirley and Whittemore, I think, but maybe South Shirley and Judson. And so there's like a hole in the middle of the intersection. Where do the dollars
That comes out of either the local or the major road funds under contracted services. And I can look, but I believe we have 300,000 allocated in both of those funds, and that takes care of any of those sinkholes that happen within the roadway, sinkholes that happen around the catch basins that fall in, or any of that type of work comes out of that contracted construction work.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Rutherford, did you have a hand?
It is my hope that we have more transparency about when these deadlines come, because perception is reality. And so it looks as if we have all these plans, but never a start date or end date. And this ain't a jab. This is just what it is. Y'all got to do better than this. Good job. That's it.
Further discussion? Public Works going once, Public Works going twice. Sold for the cost of a sinkhole. Thank you very much, Mr. Cooley. Next up, we have Recreation.
All right, well, good evening, council members. Turn that mic on. Good evening, council members. As you know, we do not have a director of our overall department. We do have managers. So I will fill the director's position tonight in going through the presentation, but all of the managers are here to answer specific questions about their different budgetary divisions.
What is our prognosis for a director?
Don't speak that into existence, please. Please do not, because I do not want to have to do this again. That is a great question. We do not currently have a front-running individual. So I do not have a real date in mind at all. Yes,
But
Councilwoman.
the previous directors that was voted on and approved, that's a,
The previous director that was voted on and approved is not 100% out of the picture, but is very much a long shot, which is why I said we do not have a front-running individual.
do you have a question related to that?
Prior to that, there were several candidates that you interviewed, if I recall, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Some of them locally that were a part of this. And so are you going back to those local people who are qualified to be re-interviewed again?
We will definitely be reopening this up, and if they are still interested, yes, they will be interviewed again.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Please proceed. Sorry for that sidebar.
No, not a problem. It was actually a great question. All right, so the current org chart of the Parks and Rec division is very simple. We have a youth recreation division, we have a senior recreation division, and we have a parks division. I am happy to say that under the parks division, we have scheduled to have 6 different grounds crew members who will be full-time employees of the city, so that is year-round. 2 of them have actually, 2 people have accepted positions, and they will be beginning the 2nd and 3rd weeks of June. Is that correct? Yes. So we will, as we go into June, we will have 2 attendants at our parks. So they will be, currently what is happening is we have DPW opening the parks in the morning, and we have some situations where volunteers are getting the parks closed at night for us. When we get these 2 individuals coming in June, DPW will continue to open in the mornings, but those staff will come in to work later so that they can manage the parks during the day and they can get them closed at night. Once we have all 6 individuals working for us, DPW will not need to open the parks in the morning. We will actually have enough park staff to split their shifts so that they can open in the morning and close at night.
Councilman Rutherford.
Has there been a staff change at the Bowen Center that I'm not aware of?
A staff change, no. A change in duties and responsibilities, yes. What is the staff change that you're looking for?
It's an individual I don't see on there. I'm a little confused. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
That was, thank you.
I'll add that we did hear from the senior centers regarding those changes in job titles, and it was certainly an administrative change. The individuals are functioning in those positions. The job titles were not appropriate. They drafted new job descriptions, worked with the HR department. So now they're really, they have a job description that is perfectly square with what their duties are, that they can be managed by. They've all agreed. This was a nice conversation between all of that staff. So I think if you're worried about any of the job titles, this was certainly a collaborative effort on behalf of those centers.
I'll shoot my shot. I see there's a vacant for adjacent sports coordinator. Adapt. I couldn't see. You know, they only Gucci. They're not Prada. So is that actively being pursued? Because I've gotten contacted by several people asking about that particular job, who also applied for the director's job. So is that job being interviewed?
I don't believe that the adaptive sports coordinator has been posted as of yet. Is that correct?
You want me to show you the post?
No.
Oh, okay.
It has been. Okay. So I stand corrected. It has been posted. I do not, so I'm not directly involved in those interviews, but Manager Taylor, when she gets up, can speak to that more in depth.
Thank you.
Yes.
Further questions on the organizational chart? Please proceed.
All right. And so overall, the mission of Parks and Recs is to provide citizens of Pontiac with diverse recreational and enrichment activities and spaces in which to carry out those activities. And that is across the board, youths, seniors, and everyone in between. This department is funded very interestingly. There is a dedicated millage for the youth, there is a dedicated millage for the seniors, and there is no dedicated stream of funding for the parks themselves. Parks are all funded through the general fund appropriation or through whatever grants it is that we are able to raise to handle them. And then you see the approximate amounts that we expect to bring in from the existing millages. In this current fiscal year, a couple of things that I would like to point out that we were able to do. The first is specifically in the youth department. Oh, man, you left it blank. So after school and summer programs, we were able to bring in over 30 different programs for summer, in the summer and after school. So we're talking about basketball, baseball, flag football, chess, baking, a young entrepreneurs program, a writing program. None of that, well, I shouldn't say none of that. Outside of the sports, we didn't have those programs going before.
Are our programs? No, he pointed to.
I did. That was my fault. That was my fault.
He pointed to me.
Man doesn't run this
I apologize. Are our programs,
You got the floor.
are our programs ADA compliant?
Some of them most certainly are. That is why when we go back to the beginning to adaptive sports coordinator, the idea is to make sure that we have more programs that are geared towards individuals who are differently abled. So obviously, when we're talking about a full-scale baseball team or a full-scale basketball team, that is not something that is going to be ADA compliant. But we can, when we have an adaptive sports coordinator, create specific teams and programs that are designed to be inclusive of more individuals. The baking program, the writing program, the entrepreneur program, those would all be examples of ADA compliant programs.
Okay, and my follow-up is in regards to the renovation of the senior center floors, bathroom, or parking. Are any of those finished in regards to the bathroom?
I don't believe that the bathrooms are finished.
They not. Do you have a timeline, an actual date when it's going to happen? Because he's paid for it. Just want to know.
I do not, but when the manager gets up, she may have a better timeline for you as she is there every day with the contractors.
Can we ask the manager to get up so I can answer this question?
Well, he's got
Go
he's
ahead.
got a presentation. There's
I'm
a
sorry.
rhythm
I just
to
have a
it.
lot of stuff that's been asked of me.
Only
I
make Deborah
apologize.
Finley get up once.
No,
Deborah
that's
Finley
okay.
instructed me that we weren't supposed to ask questions today, so she can go home.
Oh, okay. I didn't get the memo. Sorry. Keep
I
going.
jest. Just to keep myself awake, I'm making jokes here. If you please
Yeah.
proceed, if that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and so as the councilwoman has said, the senior centers, the big thing there is that in this fiscal year, we have begun renovations. We hope to have those done probably not before June 30th, but in the near future. And then for the Parks Division, we have been working with Oakland County to bring forth some great new partnerships and investment in the parks.
Councilman Parker? Microphone?
Thank you, sir. You mentioned 500K for Crystal Lake Park. What's this going to be done in that park?
Yeah. So for Crystal Lake Park, we are working towards shoreline improvements. We are looking at the potential of the dock would include the shoreline improvements, but we are also looking towards what am I trying to say? Potential of volleyball courts and passive recreation materials such as benches and pavilions and other things. But we are, and again, Manager Zegarzuski can speak more to the planning process because none of those plans are cemented in stone. We are actually in a planning process to say these are the amenities that make sense for that area, and we have the Parks Master Plan that included citizen input in the past. But before we make final decisions, we will also just reconfirm that what's in that Parks Master Plan is in fact what the citizens would like to see at that park.
And is this 500,000 for that park in addition to the 500,000 that each district was?
Yes, this is separate. This is separate money.
So District 5 would get their 500 extra too?
So this 500,000 is actually coming from Oakland County.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Further, let's roll with it.
Okay. So what we are hoping to achieve with the budget that has been laid in front of you, we'd like to break ground on the Youth Recreation Center, which we acquired the location for this year. We would like to expand our summer play activities, specifically with the summer play activities. We currently have the Murphy Park program, which everyone is aware of and it has been going strong for years. We'd like to recreate that in a couple of different places across the city. We'd like to get our several baseball fields repaired and in good shape. We would like to formally begin adult recreation leagues. So we have some informal leagues that individuals, that the community has just started and they run and they do, but we would like to actually get more involved with creating and encouraging adults of all ages to get out and enjoy the parks through recreation leagues. That's actually one of the things that Mr. Zegarzuski did in his former job, so we're looking forward to him being able to bring that experience here. We'd like to continue the work on the senior centers. One of the things that is not currently included in the plans that we all know and have talked about is finishing up the work at the Bowen Center on the outside deck. There are some chairs, some seatings and things that need to be done, so we'd like to complete that work. And then we would like to increase and diversify the actual programming that's offered to the seniors, right? So they have the solid, tried and true programs that they've been doing for years. Now that we actually have not just workers in the buildings, but we've actually taken an individual, Ms. Deborah, and she has been elevated. She now has time to strategically think about what are the holes and opportunities that we've not been presenting the seniors with so that we can bring in new and expanded programming for their benefit.
Pro Tem Carrington had a question.
Yes.
Yes, just a quick question concerning J.C. Park. I know that historically, I guess during the time that we had emergency manager, a lot of that was leased out.
Yes.
So when does that lease come to an end, and when do we totally take back that whole area of J.C. Park?
The lease itself has come to an end. Yes. And as far as when we totally take back the park and plans for the park,
Yes.
when the manager gets up, he can speak to
Okay, no
the
problem.
park.
Yeah,
Yep.
thank
Great
you.
question, though. Okay. And then so major changes that you will see from the year that we are in to the year that we are going to. When you look specifically at the line item budgeting for the youth division, all of that has been combined into one item. So before it was youth recreation and youth center. Now it is just youth recreation. Everything is under one line item. The same is true with the senior centers. It has been combined. Historically, we broke it out to say, this is for Ruth Peterson, this is for the Bowen Center, and going forward, we are saying this is for the seniors. It honestly makes for much better, it makes for easier understanding of where the money is being spent, but it also just makes for much better planning and budgeting. Instead of saying, hey, we're going to do this activity specifically here and this activity specifically here, we can say, for the seniors, we are offering these activities, and based on historically where the seniors have been using those activities, we can move them to whichever center makes sense, as opposed to having to come and do amendments to get the programming where it belongs. Another major difference for the senior centers is that we reorganize the workforce, which we've already discussed. And for the parks, you will see a large increased commitment of general fund dollars to supporting the parks. So those are the highlights of what you will see in this presentation. And I believe the first one that we have, let's see here. The first one that we have tonight is Parks and Recreation, the actual parks. So now would be the time for whatever questions the councilman had.
Yes, think you got the question, sir? Or you-
Yes,
okay.
so plans for JC Park and with ownership. So when we pull into JC Park, I know some people may not be aware of this, but the first park you come across, the one on the left, that is actually owned by the Bostic Truck Company. So when I first came in and did my first drive around the park and looked at the boundary of our parks, noticed that we didn't own it. So I reached out to the company, and the owner was interested in selling us the 3 acres that lot or that field sat on. Because obviously you drive into that park and it's obvious it is designed for athletics, ball fields all around. So, initial thought is to redevelop that park into a field complex where we could eventually host and have outside tournaments being at that location. Now, recently, if you've been there in the past month, things have kind of changed. They are now using that field as a storage space. So, reached out to the owner again, and he has informed me that, if once our DPW department has their own site and we are no longer using the Joslin site as a host for our equipment and our materials, they may be able to pull some stuff off of that field. And then at that point, if they don't see a need to use that field as storage, they are willing to approach that idea again of us purchasing that land to help expand that park. In the meantime, the local club team run by John Hodgins, who was involved in the Dodgers organization, they have approached me after finding out that that field is being used for storage, asking if they can use our field. In collaboration with that, they will put in a lot of their efforts to maintain our field, which they have already put in a lot of work, which I have agreed upon. And eventually, if we develop a program, we will always get first dibs on our parks. He is made aware of that, but in the meantime, right now we just have youth programs hopefully being developed and used on our fields once the field at Bodette and the 2 at Aaron Perry have been repaired. So JC Park, long run, I would like to see us develop that whole park into a softball/baseball complex, not only to host our programs, youth and adults, but also to allow outside organizations to come in and rent our facilities for weekend tournaments and stuff like that.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Councilman James.
Yeah, I have another comment, but before, I'm still not clear on, we don't own the ball diamond. Currently, Bostic owns it,
Yes.
and they are allowing the city to use it as a storage facility?
No, so the Bostic Truck Company is using it as storage. They completely tore out a section of center field, and they brought in trucks, and it's pretty much just a piece of land to them now, so.
So the baseball team that built that facility, or did Bostic build it? Because we've never.
Bostic was working in collaboration with the club team. For the most part, I know the club team's parents kind of raised a lot of the money to do a lot of the repairs out there, and they were pretty much told that they cannot use it. So they approached us, seeing if they can use our field that's right next to them.
So the ball field has been told they cannot use the
Yeah,
baseball field anymore?
and that is what I've been informed, yes.
Do you have something on that, Deputy Mayor?
So just to follow up and give a little bit more history here, the actual outline of the park that is, there are a total of 3 ball fields there. 2 of them are and have been owned by the city. The 3rd ball field has always been owned by the Bostic Corporation. And as the Bostic Corporation had excess land and did not actually need it, they allowed the city to use it as parkland, but it has always been owned by the corporation. As time went on, that particular field, for whatever reason, was the field that was kept in the best condition, and so that was the field that people played on. And from the layperson looking at it, it would just appear that it is part of the park and owned by the city, but it never, in fact, has been owned by the city. As Manager Zagorzuski said, when the city began using Bostic Corporation for our DPW vehicles, we took part of the land or buildings that they would normally use for storage, which again was not an issue because Bostic Corporation had way more land and buildings than they actually needed for their current projects. As early as, or as recently as February, Bostic Corporation was saying, yeah, you know what? We would actually entertain selling you, actually formally selling you the parkland. Between then and now, Bostic increased its business and said, hey, we can't sell you this land because we need it for storage. However, once you are no longer renting our building, we can move the storage to the building and we can again consider selling you this surplus land.
Okay,
A follow-up question, Councilwoman James?
yes, I'm not done yet.
Okay.
So south of the baseball diamond, that property belongs to the city?
Correct.
Does it extend all the way out to Joslin?
Yes, so if you are going into the park from so to Joslin, along the shrubbery and the fence line all the way up to Joslin, we own that, and it goes back to pretty much where those power lines are. So the last 30 feet of grassland that you see in the park technically is not our property, and that's just because of the power line structures right there. But we own from Joslin all the way across, then up to the entrance of the park, so just a big L-shaped.
Okay.
Anything further?
All right. Well, the last thing was just a comment, and that is, as president of as the chair of the Parks, Recreation, and Public Works Subcommittee, we were very much interested in seeing, we had so many hopes and dreams for this particular department, and we were really looking forward to having a parks director. That was our big dream. But I have to say that the way it's worked out has really been working, that we didn't get the parks director that we wanted, but we were able to get an incredible park recreation manager, and we really have been able to get the managers ahead of the director, and you would think that that would not be a good scenario, but it has really worked out for us. Sometimes you get these surprises, and it has worked out for us, and hopefully we still very much want to see a director brought in. But I have to say that finding and identifying the managers that we have has been a real benefit to the city. So, just a comment.
Councilman Rutherford.
Here we go. First question to the administration. Last year, you guys had raised money for the Maddie McKinley Hatchet Park. There's a windfall of $150,000. What are your active plans to get that money and start the rebuild of that park?
I don't have that specific information. Mr. Zagorzuski, have you been in contact with the grants director on that particular project?
You just, Maddie McKinney?
Yes, you guys.
Yes. So we had a meeting several months ago. I do not remember the gentleman's name who is overseeing the funding.
Dustin McClellan.
Yes. So it sounded like, just a quick rundown of it, the project is, they're still in search of another $100,000 to finish the project. They're almost there. He's got the design plans, and I believe he was working with Director Borngesser on a way to acquire the last bit of funding needed to begin that project. And as soon as they do, I believe the project just needs to be started by 2024. So that's the last I've heard of the project. It was the last time we spoke with Dustin, so I know it's just a fundraising thing for the last little bit of funding, and then it can get started.
That ain't happening this year. Okay, second question is this. Let's deal with the mini parks for a minute, shall we? Let's talk about Art Dunlap for a moment. We allocated ARPA dollars to repair mini parks in our district, ARPA and Motor. When is the actual date, an actual shovel, and an actual plan will be presented to the council?
Yeah, so the RFP was sent out for all the mini parks probably about a month ago at this time. Still waiting to hear back from the finance department on the status of that process. And we have had a vendor from M1 Concourse step forward saying he would like to make a large donation for the basketball court repairs with hoops, backboards, and possibly courts and fencing. So Director Borngesser is also working with that individual as an in-kind donation for that project as well.
And
So
what-
as for dates, so like I said, RFP is sent out. We're just waiting to hear back next steps of when we can move forward.
So basically, that isn't going to happen this year?
Unknown. Like I said, those funds, again, 2024 is the date where everything needs to be spent by. So the project could be this summer into fall. Deputy Director?
So that is actually a great question. As the manager has said, an RFP has been sent out for work in all of the mini parks. One other thing that we have found on the RFPs is that some of our RFPs, we were receiving less than optimal responses because we were not leaving them on the street long enough. So for this RFP, it's currently been out for about a month. I believe in the next week or so, it will actually close, and hopefully that will have been long enough for us to get a robust response from more than one or two applicants. Assuming that we do get those applicants and it closes, let's say, in the next 2 weeks, it usually takes about 30 days for us to go through and bring something to City Council, at which point City Council usually takes 2 weeks or so to approve, and then that will give you the timeline for when we could begin work on the mini parks.
Last question. So Maddie's been for 2 years, though. That was the first thing y'all did when y'all got into this administration. So my frustration is that nothing has happened. And there are people who want to know when it's going to happen. So just as a precaution, I just want to ask the president a question, man, if I can, sir. We could do an amendment for this issue, correct? For the McKinney-Hatchett project?
Where you want to give more money?
Yeah.
So it like fills the gap?
Yeah, because that particular, there's not a park that's safe for those kids in that area, and I'm just trying to figure out what y'all gonna do. So I just want to know, can I do it?
Yeah, the short answer is that would absolutely be in order for an amendment to be considered. Do you have a good sense of what that dollar amount is that they're short?
The exact element, I believe, was an estimated 100,000.
From per Dustin McCullen, when I talked to him on Friday before I asked you that question, it is approximately $150,000.
150.
150.
Just in terms of increased
Uh-huh.
construction costs. Okay.
That's it.
Yeah, I mean, that would be in order. Then you just got to get
I'll work with that, but I just want to make sure.
council to vote for it.
Thank you.
Further questions, Parks and Recreation, I'm sorry, Councilman Nicholson, yes.
To the administration, I'm concerned that we have an RFP out when the neighborhoods need some sort of visioning sessions, especially when it comes to Indian Village Park. I know there's going to be a lot of input from those immediate neighbors in my district. Other question is, there is a mini park in my district, Trinity Baptist Church. I'm wondering, have we found any sort of care agreement, contracts as to the naming with that mini park?
As far as what I've been able to track, nothing. I have not found any paper trail of those documents.
Sort of forgotten haven. There's some great play equipment there, but it's taken over by grass and chickens for the most part.
Yeah.
I know the
Is that the one
ARP.
on Stout?
Yeah,
Stout's got chickens over there?
there are.
We'll see what our ordinance changes have to say about that.
I didn't count them, but I have a
Councilwoman
follow-up.
James, Councilwoman James had some feedback on that,
Oh,
though,
okay,
in terms
great.
of that.
Yeah, I'll yield.
When we're discussing the Adopt a Park program, you were sharing about that Trinity, where it was sort of informal. It was never necessarily.
Well, they requested to have the park named after their church, and they agreed to do, they didn't really agree to be adopt a full adopt a park kind of a program, but they said that they did request to have the park name changed. And so the city agreed to do that, and they agreed that they would would work on the park and they would keep it, clean it up and do programs out there, but none of that was formalized. So it really wasn't a formal adopt a park, but they formally asked the city to change the name of the park.
Understood, thank you.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yes, so the ARP dollars, while we've assigned them in categories, I'm wondering when we anticipate moving those dollars to the general fund. Do you have an idea and timing?
Yeah, so my thought, hope, belief is that those dollars would get moved. I mean, it's kind of a moot point, but that those dollars would get moved to the general fund in June. We may just wait till July, because if we move them to the general fund in June, they're just going to have to be rolled over and reappropriated to July anyway.
Yeah, my concern is there are some projects in, let's say, Bodett Park, for example, the recreation shed that's at the front, where neighbors have said, I'd love to, I've got roofers, I've got, carpenters, that they're like, this could be a really fun weekend project where we get a bunch of people together, we find out what materials we need. I don't necessarily want to attribute district dollars, as we've got other higher ranked priorities, but especially if we're going to have an attendant there and have recreation equipment that we put out and take back in the morning, it'd be nice to have a local storage area. So I'm wondering if in that process, is there any opportunity for potential local neighborhood projects to be funded out of those efforts?
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
Councilman Rutherford.
Yeah, I just got one question. Don't we have a $3 million deficit, a structural deficit? Am I wrong about that?
You are not wrong about that.
$3,150,000 deficit with the Manny McKinney Park amendment.
Right, and so this is why I'm going to ask that. And yet we're giving a 3% raise across the board, but we have a $3 million deficit. I just want to make sure I got this. I want to see, like, we're giving everybody a 3% raise, everybody, and we got a deficit.
Yes, ma'am.
How are we justifying that?
Would you like me to speak to that?
Absolutely.
Okay. So that is a great question, and it is unfortunately not a short answer. So I will go as quickly as I can without glossing over. Structural deficits come about because an organization cannot meet its basic needs with the income that it has. So what that means is that just operating the bare minimum is costing the organization more than it brings in. So the organization can choose to cut its operations down to whatever amount of money it actually brings in. If we were to do that, if the city of Pontiac were to cut its operations down to, say, we only brought in $40 million, so we can only spend $40 million, that would not allow us to actually produce the bare minimum services that are required for the city, which means that that citizens of the city would then have to choose, do they live where they are not receiving service, or do they move across the imaginary line and go to a municipality which is producing service? In order to be able to retain staff, actually, no, I'm not even going to go there yet. So in order to be able to retain citizens and investment in the city has chosen to operate in a deficit by pulling money out of our fund balance to provide the bare minimum services. Now, if all we do is provide the bare minimum services, we are still going to be giving our residents and investors the choice of saying, do I deal with the bare minimum services, or do I find the worst house in the best neighborhood across the imaginary line and go get average to above average services? So what we have chosen to do is to invest and grow instead of cutting and reducing. So investing and growing means that we are looking at our project delivery, our service delivery, and saying, where are the areas that we believe a nominal amount of money can make a huge change. A great example of that was DPW. Bringing DPW services back in-house, when we looked at the cost of what we were spending to outsource that activity versus what it would cost to bring those activities back in-house, it was either breaking even or costing just a little bit more. But in that estimate, what we were able to do was go from providing the bare minimum service of getting the streets plowed and different things to actually having the streets plowed within 24 hours of the end of the snow. We were able to purchase street sweepers so that we can have our streets looking amazing. We are working right now on putting together a plan to say, hey, you know what? Our PACER ratings, which is how we determine what a street looks like, go from 1 being it is at the end of anybody's useful life, it's basically rubble, to 10 being a brand new street. We're currently somewhere on a citywide average around 3, which is deplorable. And so we are putting together a plan to say, how do we get from deplorable to something that is above average where people actually choose and want to be? And I am happy to say that in just this 1 year that we've been here, we have seen our property values rise dramatically, which means that we have done something right to make people want to choose to live and invest in the city of Pontiac. When it comes to the idea of giving a 3% raise across the board, that is a cost of living adjustment. That is what we are able to do just to try and keep up with the rate of inflation, which, by the way, 3% does not keep up with the rate of inflation, but it was at least something that we could do to try and retain workers. As you've already heard over the course of the year that we've been in office, and many, many times tonight and at different city council meetings, we are having a very difficult time finding staff. And a large reason for that is because we are not the most cost competitive employer. We are, according to a couple of different surveys, inside the range of average. So if we look at, municipalities in Michigan, who pays the lowest rate and who pays the highest rate, we're not beneath the lowest, we're not above the highest, so we are somewhere in the middle, but we are somewhere in the middle at the bottom, which makes us not very competitive against Michigan municipalities, but makes us very much not competitive against the private sector. So anything, even those little nominal things that we can do to try and stay with the status quo is very important to keep us as competitive as we possibly can be, so that we don't have continual turnover, so that we can actually continue to move forward with the plans that we have laid out. The last thing that I will say about our structural deficit is that, again, now that we have a finance director, there are some amazing things that we can do that we have not traditionally done to try and rebalance our books to address that. But because we were as short-staffed as we were, there was not the time to devote towards the intellectual activity of just working with numbers, moving them this way, moving them that way, modeling to see what it would look like. But we have already discussed a plan that very well could, just in the way we access the debt markets, take us from being in a structural deficit to having a structural surplus.
So my follow-up is this. Y'all moved $10 million, I just want to make sure I got this right, out of the ARPA funds when we first got into office. Is that correct? To offset?
I'm trying to make sure that I formulate my answer properly. When we presented the budget for the year that we are currently in, the administration proposed and the city council approved taking $10 million of the ARPA fund, which is the statutory limit, and classifying those funds as lost revenue.
And so the reason why I'm asking that is if y'all move $10 million and we got a $3 million structural deficit, how do we still have a $3 million structural deficit? And explain this to me as if I'm a fourth grader, because I don't understand it.
That is a great question. Thank you for asking and giving me the opportunity to respond. When we say a structural deficit, all that simply means is that in any given year, I am spending more money than I am bringing in. It does not mean that I am spending more money than I actually have access to. So, to use your analogy of explaining it to an elementary school student, if in any given year I bring in $10, but I want to spend $12, if I have a bank account that has $20 in it, I bring in 10, I take $2 out of my bank account, and I spend the 12. So I have not spent more money than what I have access to. We are allowed to do that, and that is called deficit spending. A structural deficit is when the amount of money that I am obligated to spend out is more than the amount of money that I am bringing in. So again, to use the elementary school example, I'm an elementary school student, and I buy my lunch every day, and I have to buy my lunch every day. My lunch every day costs $12. Right? That is what lunch cost me. It cost me $12. So I am obligated to spend more money than I am bringing in. That is a structural deficit. So I can get out of that structural deficit by cutting and not eating lunch some days, right? So if I cut back and I don't eat lunch every day, now I don't have a structural deficit. I am not spending more money. I'm not obligated to spend more money than I'm bringing in. But now I am actually going hungry every day. And so I can only do this for so long before I actually start to feel the effects of hunger. I also can only spend more money than I'm bringing in for so long before I run out of money in my bank account. So I have a choice between doing two things. I can eventually starve myself by not eating every day, or I can try to find a way to take money out of my bank account and invest it in opportunities that mean that instead of bringing in $10, I will eventually be bringing in the $12 that I need, and now I will no longer be in a structural deficit.
Okay. So are we in deficit or are we not in deficit? Because I guess the reason why I'm so frustrated is what was the point of moving the $10 million then? Because that took away from different opportunities. You saying it's a structural deficit, just pay the $3 million and we wouldn't be in deficit. Would it not make that accurate, sir?
So that is, again, a great question. And no, it would not. It is not that easy because, again, deficit spending just means that in this 1 year, I am spending more money than I brought in this year. And unless and until the city brings in more money, and the main way the city brings in money is taxes. So unless and until the city does enough investing in itself to get the citizens and to get others to build new buildings in the city to increase the taxes that are paid in the city, we are going to need to spend more money than we bring in to provide basic services, to clear the roads, to pay for police, to pay for fire, right? To pay for the streetlights. All of that, just police and fire alone are over $24 million. The general fund budget through property taxes and income taxes is approximately, what, 8 and 18, 26 million. So just using those two categories alone, we're already in a structural deficit with those items. But then we also have state revenue sharing. So then that will bring us above that. But that's just those two. We haven't paved any roads. We haven't staffed anybody to actually be able to collect the taxes. We don't have a building that people work out of to collect the taxes. So again, what we are trying to do is we're saying we have enough money in the bank that over the course of the next couple of years, we can afford to take money out of our bank account to make sure that we are creating a workplace that people want to be, so that we don't have continual turnover and we can actually build a great team. We are saying that we are taking money out of our bank account so that we can provide not the bare minimum services, but actual services that people want to receive so that they choose to stay here. And if they choose to stay here, other people may also choose to come here and eventually raise values so that we are growing ourselves out of a deficit. You cannot cut yourself out of a true deficit. You can only grow yourself out.
Next on the speakers list is Pro Tem Carrington.
Thank you, President McGinnis. Thank you for breaking that down. But I got a question concerning the Headley override. I know the citizens approved a millage increase. So what's the projection of that income? I know you gave us a number in the past. It's not on the top of my mind.
No, not a problem. That was a projected $1.25 million increase.
So, okay, so projected 1.25. All right, thank you.
And about 600,000 of that is for the additional deputies and increase
Yes,
in
that's
rank
true.
for the sheriff contracts.
So basically, it's about 600 to 700,000 a year increase. Okay, thank you.
Councilman Nicholson, then Parker and James. Oh, okay, great.
Janitorial supplies, we've got $2,000 budgeted. I imagine that's trash bags at this point for the year. So I anticipate that means we don't intend on having any of the bathrooms operational for this season, for this fiscal year.
Great question.
Yes, right now, we have the 2 restrooms that are operational only by event requests only at Bodette and at Murphy Park. In the future, as we start to rebuild our restrooms, obviously that line item I project next year being a much different number as we get the facilities more up to date.
Thank you.
Councilman James?
Yeah, that was part of my first question was, were we planning on opening the bathrooms at Bodette Park? Are we planning on using any of our opera dollars, district by district, to do some upgrades? It wouldn't take a lot of money to just clean that bathroom up and get some basic upgrades in there.
Yep, so right now, we have $2 million of the ARPA funds designated to community parks. So Director Borgesser and I are exploring RFPs to update a few restrooms, facilities. Right now, we're looking to target doing a full rebuild of Oakland Park, their restroom, and then also doing upgrades at Bodette and Murphy Park, potentially a full redo at one of the sites, depending on the cost that we get for doing a full redo based off the one that we get from at Oakland Park.
Okay, also on line item 208-756-745 recreational supplies, you're at 75,000. I was wondering what that was, and the one under there. One is 35 and one is 75,000. I was wondering if you could clarify those two.
Yeah, which line items were those again?
It's 208-756-745. 000.
Okay, my list does not, I have the 818 section here in front of me. So what are can you just tell me the line items one more time? I can give you a rough guess of what they are.
The line item is 208-7.
The
Pardon?
title.
The name? Okay,
yeah.
the name is Recreation Supplies.
Mm-hmm.
And one is 35,000, and the one underneath is 75,000.
Yeah, I would say that is, for recreational supplies, we would be looking at such items, at least from like a Parks and Grounds standpoint of trash can, receptacles. We could do, thank you so much. Okay. Yeah, so we would look into increase the amount of trash can and trash can holders or receptacles, as you call them, inside the parks, dog waste bags. You could do some more park benches, picnic tables, or at least the rebuilding the ones that are damaged and falling apart. And then if we go into, adult programming, ordering supplies, where if we're redoing the ball fields, we're going to need to order bases, the anchors and the pegs that go with that, some equipment to take care of those, plus chalk for programming purposes, and so items like that.
Okay. Okay, under programming, the 020, you've got two line items for programming. One is at 225,000, and the other one is at 82,000. 004, no, excuse me, 020, both are 020.
The programming, I believe that will be an answer for Tanisha. when
Would
she
that
comes up.
be recreation programming in the park?
I do believe so, yes.
Okay. Okay, that's all I got.
Councilman Rutherford?
Alex,
Yes.
I want to ask you a question. The 4 positions that you have for park cleanup, have you reached out to just impacted individuals who have applied for those jobs? The reason why I'm asking is because those jobs are minimum, and it's an opportunity for the city to show good faith that we actually are interested in hiring people who are just as impacted. Has that happened at all? There was a presentation several weeks ago of trying to foster a relationship from programs that are located in our city. Has that happened?
So right now, the current people that we have been interviewing are just those who have applied for the position.
Okay. And my last question is this. You guys are going to use Michigan Works students to work in the parks as well?
So yeah, we are attempting to fill seasonal positions, including Michigan Works, as one of our resources to reach out to people that would be interested in that for like
Question.
a 20-week program.
I'm sorry, I'm going to cut you off. To the administration, are you guys going to offer them de-escalation training, especially in Bodette and in Murphy Park?
That's a great question. Currently, that had not been contemplated because they are not meant to be de-escalators. They are meant to keep the parks clean, but we will definitely make sure that they have proper training so that they do not unintentionally escalate any problem. So in a sense, that will be de-escalation, but I don't want to suggest that we are going to offer them de-escalation training in the sense that we want them to go and actively try to stop individuals who are engaging in inappropriate behavior. We would like those individuals, because they are essentially teens, to inform adults and let adults handle those problems.
And so that's my follow-up. There will be an actual adult supervising these teams, because here's why I'm asking. Bodette is a whole different animal in the summertime, and it's going to be an issue if these children are out there not being not only just protected, but the entity of what they represent. It's especially going to get harder as it gets hotter in the mill down, from what I know. And so I'm simply asking so that I need to, and I'll ride through, you know me, I'll take pictures of film. And so I just want to make sure that we're protecting these kids and not just having them out there in the wind.
Yeah, I can piggyback on that one, where the purpose of a seasonal employee is just what Deputy Mayor just said, just to do basic trash pickup, to patrol the parks, keeping them clean, and do more of the simple projects. Our full-time staff will be the ones that are, if they have to respond, or if they're witnessing something in the parks. I've talked with Sergeant Law. He's given us our non-emergency number and instructed to give all our staff that line. And he said to strictly tell our park staff, you can go in and, for example, like late at night, if they're going in just saying, hey guys, park's closing in 10 minutes, then they come on out. They wait kind of by the entrance. If they see there's no action going through, to call the emergency line, and the sheriff's office will respond.
Parker James Nicholson.
Thank you, sir. I'm just looking at, under Parks and Grounds Maintenance, again, what's equipment rental? You have is that $100,000? What equipment we gonna be renting?
So that particular line item would be something more along with the DPW rentals, what they would need for any park maintenance projects.
That is the same depreciation as a non-cash expense, and that actually should have been cut at least in half.
So this would be 50,000 instead of 100,000? But the question becomes, if it's depreciation, what equipment we got that's depreciated?
So again, the DPW has bought lawnmowers, they've bought other equipment to maintain the park's facilities. When you think about tree trimming equipment that we do have, all of those materials need to be contemplated to be replaced over time.
But I thought that was all accounted for under the DPW budget and not the Parks and Rec budget.
Well, no, great question. So again, that's why I was saying that the DPW budget is a very convoluted budget. And what we'll have to do is at least put together a quick primer to help. The DPW budget it's the 101, is it 5 different? Yeah, so it's 5 different, not line items, but actually 5 different budget accounts. 4 of those accounts are what we call enterprise funds. And so the enterprise funds are the funds that are actually buying, owning, and operating the equipment. And we call them enterprise funds because they operate as an enterprise or a business. And that is why they have depreciation that we need to contemplate rebuying their equipment. And so when we saw that depreciation or that property equipment rental, it was in one fund to actually pay for or reimburse the fund that was actually going to be owning and operating that equipment. And you'll actually see that across multiple different divisions in the city where it's like, hey, this department will be utilizing DPW equipment, and it's like, all right, so a portion of the depreciation of that equipment is scheduled to this department to then replace that equipment over time.
All right, last question. Overtime wages, you increased by almost 200%.
So
Is that because of the extra people that we've hired?
yes and no. That is we've never done this. Best guess effort for if we have this many people, how long will they actually, we only have so many people, even trying to split schedules, how much will it take for them to get here early, stay late, and it's a first year best guess effort.
And there'll also be an addition to park staff helping out with special events and stuff running by our youth program for setting up and being present there to help with trash pickup and stuff after the events too. So that'll be an addition to the overtime wages that we can expect.
All right, thank you.
Councilwoman James?
Yes, getting back to our public engagement sessions for these, this work that's going to be done in our mini and neighborhood-sized parks. Cherry Lawn Park is the target that I have for District 4 because J.C. Park is kind of another animal, and Hawthorne Park is now being taken over with the county. So most of my funds will be going into Cherry Lawn Park. And I guess my question is to administration as well as you, Alex, who's in the best position to do these community engagement sessions about the parks? Should it be the city or should it be the district people themselves through their district council meetings? Because we definitely have got to get community input for these,
So that's a great question, and I would say that the answer to that is it really needs to be a true collaboration. I would say at the end of the day, city council, while you are in fact paid to be city council members, you have full-time jobs outside of this. So I would say that the onus of organizing the meetings and, facilitating and holding the meetings should fall on the administration. But absolutely, we need like literally cannot do the work without the city council publicizing and going to your community meetings and community events and getting people to actually come to the meetings. Whereas we have the time to create flyers and put together agendas, get City Hall set up. All of that means nothing if we can't get residents to come and attend.
Okay, but what's the timeline for, when do these community engagement sessions need to take place? You know, given that we're already trying to get RFPs done and we still don't know, we don't have the community input yet.
Yeah.
So when do these community engagement sessions need to happen so that we can start trying to work them into our, district sessions?
A lot of that depends on, the scale of the project. I mean, if it's a large-scale park redevelopment, obviously there's going to be several stages of the community engagement meetings for the design concepts. And if it's something that we are just looking to replace playground structures or something like that, I don't see us needing, several community engagements rather than just maybe just a handful, small scale. But it all depends on what funding comes across and what we can approach with the funding that we have. So pretty much, it's kind of my goal is to approach our grants department saying, hey, I would like to do this, this project next. They tell me where we can get funding from, and then from there we reach out with a plan of community engagement, design plans, and just communication between us and the council and the subcommittee for the Parks and Rec department of what needs to happen next. So, like I said, it all just really depends on the scale of the project and what we're able to attack when it comes to the redesign of our parks. So long run, I would like to be the one that we get a project planned, I reach out to you, we plan, the next steps of what we need to do, whether it be public input or for something that we can just go forth with, and then just come up with a project scope for everything that we're doing in the parks.
But I guess what I'm thinking that the council people should be a part of putting that plan together. We should be a part of looking at, we know our districts, and we should be a part of putting that design plan together that's going to go to our residents to see, what input that they want to make on it.
Yeah, and right now, a lot of it is based off the master plan that was developed. So each park in our master plan has an outline of the needs for each park. So that is something that the grants department and the parks department is setting forth with, trying to allocate funds for those projects to be in accordance with our master plan.
Okay, but I'm looking specifically at the $571,000 that is, that's basically what I'm looking at. The opera dollars that each one of the council people or the council districts will be spending in our district. We're looking at the parks that we want that money spent in, and we're looking at the need to hold engagement sessions to determine how that money is going to be spent in our district.
So yes, Councilwoman. So we were talking across each other, and so that is a different question. As we were answering your question, we were answering your question from the standpoint of, hey, what are we doing with our general fund dollars in parks? And the answer to that question is, we have an existing parks master plan, which we are using as our base to say, and that's what we used for the RFP that went out to say, hey, this is what we believe needs to be done in the parks. How much is this going to cost? And we will get that information, and we will reconfirm that information with residents to say, this is what we have currently planned to do in the parks. This is how much it is going to cost. Do you agree with this is what we should go forward with? Is there something that we should take out? Are there other things that we should add in? That's what we were answering. Your question was different. Your question was, hey, we have separate money, ARPA dollars, that have been assigned. How and when are we going to do visioning sessions for those funds? And again, the answer to that is it would work best for us, being the administration, to set those meetings. But again, we need city council's involvement in the actual meeting itself. And because those are ARPA dollars, that setting will actually be, setting of the meeting will be directed by Director Borngesser, but because of the implementation area, it will be heavily engaged and involved with by Manager Zagorzuski, and of course, whichever council person the park district is in.
Anything further, Councilman James?
No.
Councilman Rutherford?
First, Alex, thank you for just answering these questions. It was not meant to have you throw it up. It was meant to challenge this administration to finish what we started. So I want to thank you for that. My last question is for the administration. And I'm bringing up this park again because it's been almost 2 years. I just want to know, how are we going to finish what we started? The park, you know what park I'm referring to and why I'm doing it, because it was all good when we announced we was doing it. And I feel like we kind of fell in my district because ain't nothing being done. And so I just simply ask, a simple ask, that you finish what you started. You was all enthusiastic about it. Be enthusiastic about finishing. Thank you.
Hearing no further questions for Parks and Recreation. How about we have senior activities? Do you want to come up and offer the opportunity for feedback and engagement?
Which is it?
Any highlights that you'd like to draw to our attention?
One of the major reasons we made some of the changes we did at the senior centers are we're trying to position ourselves to get accredited. So those are by reorganizing our workforce. There are certain things that you need to do. It's going to take us about 3 to 5 years for accreditation. So we're going to work on getting just the 9 standards of excellence in place.
Anything further you want to share?
Oh, I'm going to wait for the questions.
You had the floor if you wanted to share.
No, I was going to...
Councilman Rutherford.
First question, most important one, is the bathrooms being done, and does that directly impact the citizens that you serve? Because it's the current status of it.
It's an inconvenience, but we're making it work. One of the issues with the bathrooms were when we started the project, we were given a certain amount of funding for it. As they went into tearing the floors and stuff apart, they ran into other issues. So then they had to do change of order. So then that took time. Every time they came up with a problem, they had to go back to the funding and said, okay, we need X amount of additional funds. And so those were the issues. As you know, the senior center was actually a funeral home. So we don't know who built the funeral home, but mostly everything that we needed had to almost be custom made. Like right now, we're waiting on the partitions in between the stalls, and those weren't standard size, so they have to be built. So those were most of the issues. Our biggest day is Tuesdays, and what we actually do is turn our men's bathroom into a unisex. So no one's really had to wait. If they've had to wait, it's been maybe 1 or 2 minutes. I know every time I've gone and got up to go, there's no one in the bathroom. So I think it's been more of a inconvenience. But, you know, they weren't ADA compliance. Our doors are not a standard door, so that almost had to be custom built. We didn't have ramps, so they had to put ramps in, and when they put the ramps in, they didn't have the clearance for a wheelchair to come in, so it's just additional stuff that had to be done.
And so I'm asking this because we receive a millage for the combination of the millages for the Bowen Center, and I always forget the name of it because it ain't in my district, Ruth Peterson. And oftentimes I'm told, because you know I'm a frequent visitor of your Tuesday meeting of the illustrious Golden Opportunity Club, that they want stuff that's not being given as far as like on not your side, on the administration. For example, the computer lab is still not done. When is that going to be done? And also giving them extra income to pay for classes that may not necessarily be coming out of the senior income. What is the administration answer? So like, for example, fitness, you know, there are people who have sparked interest into doing fitness programs, and I don't want it to cut into their day-to-day income. I want to know how we gonna pay for it if they want to have the classes there. I yield to Deputy Stevens.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I will begin the answer, but I will obviously allow the manager to elaborate. But that is exactly why we are looking to, instead of having specific, this is for the Ruth Peterson Center, specific, this is for the Bowen Center, to say this is for senior services so that we can better offer classes that expand our range of activities. We have started having monthly meetings where all three service delivery areas, parks, seniors, and youth, come together to say, what can we do to make sure that we are cross-fertilizing these activities so that we can actually not just think of the parks as this green space that's out there and if come what may, but that we actually say, hey, what can we do in the parks and in parks development to make it a place where seniors want to come? Like, how can we actually make this an attractive place for seniors? And then to also say, hey, senior manager, how can we actually get seniors into the parks specifically? And then I'll let Deborah speak more on that.
Okay, on the first part with the computers, that is coming in phase 2. We actually have grant funding for that. So we're going to be upgrading both centers' computer labs. Technology has been a challenge for our seniors, and that's one of the things that we want to focus on, is bringing them up to speed. We're working on trying to get our seniors with email addresses, trying to get them comfortable using the technology. So that is on our radar. That is in phase 2 of our projects. One of the reasons why we did change titles and functions of our senior centers so we can evaluate our programs. So we're looking at what programs work, which ones don't, what we need to do more of. We're looking for a better way of tracking those programs to evaluate them.
Okay, and my last question, if you could have one thing, just one thing that actually help improve the senior centers, both of them, what would it be and why? A dream list, if you would.
Oh, it would be My Senior Center, which is actually a program. I visit, different senior centers, and I went up to one in Mount Morris, and their senior center was no bigger than this room, but they offered so much to their seniors, and what they did is a computer way of punching in when you come in. You say what you're there for. So you can track for a year, 2 years to see, okay, I had X amount of seniors showing up for this. This is a good program. Let's offer more of this. I didn't have but 2 people showing up for this. We don't need to do that. We need to find something else. So that's what, if I had my dream, that would be, and it's called My Senior Center. That would be my dream.
And I guess I should add, this is the last one, I should ask to the administration.
Last.
This is the last. And finances is something for you to do, challenging people. Have we actively pursued getting funding? Because we find funding for so many things, purchasing that program. And if so, can we find out how much the actual program costs before we do the closing of the budget? So
You
I'm
know-
sorry, but I've been working on that. There's actually some grants out there. So I've been working with Oakland County because they were looking for funding for that. I try to find as much grant money as we can and not dip into our budget. So we are actively looking at that.
But we do, just a year, we have a grant department.
Yes, and she knows about it.
But what I'm asking it to the administration, can you get the number and can the grant department be actively pursuing the largest voting population in the city of Pontiac, stuff like this? Just ask.
So, yes, ma'am, and I believe what the manager is alluding to is that the manager is the one who is most familiar with the programming, but she is working in tandem with the grants department on pursuing that funding.
Any further questions for Councilman Parker?
Thank you.
Microphone.
And under the Ruth Peterson Senior Center, you have 150,000 that was budgeted in 2023, but you're not gonna need any of that for 2024?
What was that for?
Professional services, other professional services. Line item 212-813-818-000. It says OCS CMG.
Read that line item again.
813-818-000. OCS CMG.
Okay.
I got this.
Oh.
And so if you look at the Bowens Center line item, all of that has been moved there. Again, the idea was to, and it looks like you haven't gotten the most updated because I still see some things under Ruth Peterson Center. But what should have happened is all of the money from both centers were combined to just one center so that you would not have to flip back and forth between each center when trying to determine what's going on where. So. Oh, okay. Not under recommend, it's under the council request. It's under the already beginning of making amendments to the budget.
Okay. So what was the amount? Because if I'm looking, and you said this is probably not the most accurate page. It says 150,000 was it's amended budget, but you didn't budget anything in 2024, neither in Ruth Peterson nor in Bowen Center, at least to my sheet.
So we've made some progression. So the recommended budget you can see is the second column from the end. That is the mayor's budget that you received May 1st. So from May 1st to date, the last 25 days, the administration has made changes, which is now the last column called council request. So what the deputy mayor has said is everything that was under Department 813 and Department 814 has now been combined to Department 815, which is the last page. You'll see everything has moved to the last column and has been merged, if that makes sense. So those are all the changes that the finance department has received to date. It's the last page. Everything, the two centers combined.
Well, I'm going to assume that I haven't got an updated copy because on the last page, where all of it's moved to the council requested budget, I don't have anything in that item. But I'll wait and see. Okay. Thank you. I'll take a look. And then
Other
my question-
professional services has $6,500 in it.
I did. Yeah, I saw it. And so my other question had to do with contracted janitorial services. You budgeted, and that's moved to, I would presume. So everything that's on the last page has been moved. Okay. Thank you.
$21,940.
And is that enough for a year's cleaning in both senior citizens? senior centers?
We just have part-time at each center. We use part-time. 15 hours at Ruth Peterson and 20 at the Bourne Center.
Okay. Thank you.
I apologize, and it's rare that I have to do this, but I was supposed to be back at work 15 minutes ago. That's 30 minutes away. So I am going to entertain, is there a motion for somebody willing to serve as the temporary chair?
I will.
Anyone else offering?
I will.
There's a nomination for Rutherford. There's a nomination for Parker. Is there a second for Rutherford? Is there a second for Parker?
I'll second.
Okay. Well, okay. All right. Okay. So I guess it will be the, okay.
Okay, so it's been moved for Parker, seconded for Parker. There's been a move for Rutherford. Is there a second for Rutherford? Okay, so there's two candidates. Raise your hand if you want Parker.
For the President, I'll yield to the council.
Okay, Parker withdraws. The only candidate is Rutherford. You have the theoretical gavel, but I'm not giving you the gavel. I apologize for having to leave. No disrespect intended for the remainder of senior service and youth
Also note
recreation.
that council people cannot leave the dais as we are at quorum.
Okay. Drive safe, Brother President.
With great power comes great
Responsibility.
All right, Sabbath, by citizen.
Are there any other questions for Ms. Deborah? Councilwoman James?
Yes, I have one more, and that's regarding transportation. I think quite a few months ago, there was a presentation about that Pontiac had been given some money back from SMART. And one of the things we wanted to do was to try to create some of our own options for transportation for our seniors. I'm wondering, is there anything in this year's budget to support seniors that don't have transportation?
Great question. That is not contemplated here. Those SMART dollars are still being worked out within, I believe an RFP went out for those services, but that's not included here.
So in terms of our senior budget, there's nothing in the budget that addresses any kind of transportation need. So we're not providing any kind of transportation for seniors.
Correct. This does not provide transportation to and from the senior centers.
Okay. That's all I got.
Are there any other questions? I just have one statement. I want to thank you for all the work that you do with the seniors. I can truly say, because I've watched you do it, it takes great courage and responsibility, and you truly love your seniors. And so I'm just honored that you're actually still working for this administration and for this city. And so for that, I do thank you. Thank you. Next up, we have the youth department. Good evening.
No, I'm blushing. Good evening.
Do we have any questions for the youth department? Councilman Nicholson.
Just wanted to ask and give you the opportunity to go over any major highlights or changes from the last so we can more focus our questions.
Yes, I'm super excited. Our programs, the numbers have doubled this year from last year. We've had to add a lot of different programs. And as the deputy said, we have well over 30 programs. And pleased to say for our spring and summer, they're not even all up and they're all reaching capacity. So which would shows that there's an interest and a need for us to add even more space for the classes.
Follow up. The one area, just a question of placement with city events, with that line item going specifically here, did we split that up or is this going to be the parking lot for that funding?
No, that is actually a great question. So what we recognized was the city events budget that you saw in the executive office is more professional type thing. So that is the state of the city. I shouldn't say more professional. It is more adult-oriented things. That is the state of the city and a couple of other type of events. Under the Youth Recreation Department, special events are the seasonal events that the department has been putting on. So the Winterfest, the Harvest Festival, the end of summer picnic.
Understood, thank you.
Is there any other questions? I have one. So in the past, you guys have charged for events. The average income of a household here is $22,485, yet the tickets for events were $15 to $30. So if I was a family of 6, how do we justify charging that when they actually might not be able to afford it?
So the event that I believe you're speaking of is the daddy-daughter dance?
Yes.
In that, we have to pay, for the facility, for the food, and what we did was we gave a discounted rate to those families that had multiple children.
So my not a rebuttal, but my follow-up question would be, I'm worried that I hear that you're saying you give discounts, but there are people who simply just can't afford the $15. 15 times 6, about $90. $90 can affect people's household, even though people don't understand it. If it's a low income or moderate low income or moderate household, it could actually affect food, gas, or whatever due to inflation. How are we going to offset the cost during the coming years of all the events, like the mother dance, the father's dance, things of that nature, so that we can ensure that all students in the youth program who want to come are going to be allowed? I guess I could yield that to the administration, or I could yield it to you.
Well, I can add to that to say that we had some community sponsors for families that had multiple children.
The only thing that I can say to that is intentionally by design, the vast majority of our events are free, right? So all of the after-school programming is free. Coming to the Winterfest is free. The daddy-daughter dance, is that the only specific event that actually had an entrance charge?
This year, yes.
Yeah. And that was just strictly based on the budgetary allowance.
Councilman Parker had a question.
Thank you. I have one question. As I looked at your budget, and I know we sometimes talk about this, and I've asked this question of some other people, but it may certainly apply more to youth, to recreation. I think we did a winter harvest thing, and we had the hoodies. Have we ever thought of getting hoodies and caps and selling them?
Mm-hmm.
So we have not planned to sell them from the administration standpoint, but I can say that is definitely something that the Youth Recreation Division has been exploring.
Because I'd buy one. I already have one, but if you can get another color other than orange, I certainly buy one. And my other question was, when I look at under youth sports, at least on my sheet, there's no recommended budget, so I'm assuming that went someplace else.
To Deputy Stevens.
Yes. So again, it is the whole concept that the idea was to combine it all.
All on the recreation facility stuff. Okay. Thank you. And might I say, you guys have been doing a really good job of what you guys.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Councilwoman James.
I don't see it on the budget, but I was just wanted to ask you: are we increasing our budget for contracted services this year? Are we going to try to do more than we did last year?
Yes.
Okay.
How are we doing the due diligence to make our program in LGBTQNY more friendly?
It's open. We are an equitable opportunity program for all, so it's open. We don't say, no, you can't come, or what, anyone can come.
And I guess I yield this question to the administration. Are we doing training on being able to deal with that population as well as the Hispanic population? And if so, what are those trainings and how are they readily available? I yield to Deputy Stevens.
There are currently no specific trainings directly related to bilingualism or directly related to LGBTQ concerns.
And I guess my follow-up would be to the administration, when are we going to do so? We have a large population of that group in our community, and we want them to feel empowered and engaged, and oftentimes they don't feel like they have a voice. So I'm simply asking, do we have a timeline specifically when we're going to be doing that type of training, especially in the culture that we're in where people want to have an identity? I yield again to Deputy Stevens.
So I'll start with the bilingualism, and I will say that we have done, at least inside of City Hall, I think we've done a very good job of hiring individuals who speak Spanish. So throughout City Hall, we have a good number of individuals who do speak Spanish. Myself included, but my Spanish is nowhere near as good as the individuals that we have, because we actually have individuals who are native bilingual speakers, and I'm just very thrilled and happy that we have them. Currently, in the Youth Recreation Division, we only have 2 full-time employees, and it just happens to be that neither of the 2 of them is bilingual in Spanish, but they do have access to the individuals in City Hall who do speak it. And of course, we have been very diligent in our hiring practices to look for those individuals specifically and give them preference in hiring, because they fill a need. And we want to make sure that we are addressing the needs of all of the members in our community, but not just bilingual in Spanish. Like, we would love to have someone on staff who was bilingual in Arabic. We would love to have someone on staff who spoke Hmong and a couple of other languages that we know are in fact spoken in our community. It's actually I would say a little known fact. I don't think anybody who hasn't spent a lot of time with me knows this, but I am actually one class shy of being a certified English as a second language instructor. And it just was a happenstance of the classes that I took in undergrad. So I will say that at least from that point of view, I am hyperly aware and focused on the idea of cross-cultural identities and trying to make sure that we create the most open environment possible for individuals to come and be free to participate in government. When it comes specifically to LGBTQ inclusion, one of the things that I have told anybody who will listen is that some people are not watching this, they're only listening to this and they can't see. I'm a Black man, and I have always said that if I would be offended that XYZ happened because the individual was Black, I am offended that XYZ happened because the individual was any other class, whether it be a protected class or not, because the concept is not that I am offended because I am Black. The concept is I am offended because I believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and everyone needs to be able to fully participate. So from the standpoint of that, even though we have not had specific trainings, and I take your call to action very seriously, and we will work on that. Even though we have not had specific trainings on that, we have definitely had conversations and set an expectation that this is an inclusive workplace where certain activities and behaviors are just not tolerated.
Okay. Councilman Nicholson.
there it goes. I'll add DEI to the Finance Personnel Committee's agenda so we can have a broader conversation with HR and how we can include people in ways that are easy for them to access as well.
Thank you. Is there any other questions before I ask my final question? Anyone? So here's my final question. It's a big ask. Just two. Ms. Taylor, if you could have anything for your department, what would it be and why? And my second question is, have we reached out to our recent college graduates to see if they want to work with the summer program? And if so, are we actively pursuing those people who are college graduates, Pontiac born, I might add, who might just looking for a summer job but want to give back? What are we doing to get those kids or those individuals involved?
I'm going to answer it backwards. I'm going to answer that question first. So, yes, I have. I currently am working with Michigan Works to get those youth to come in from 16 to 24. I have reached out to Oakland University for those graduates, as well as Oakland Community College that just graduated. And then to answer that, of course, I want a community center, right? We want a center. We know that that is in the works and that's coming. But right now, the biggest barrier, I would say, would be transportation. So that, if we had transportation, we'd be super happy campers.
So I guess my question would be, I'm so glad you said that. For the administration, I do believe we had a deal or a partnership with M1 Mobility. How are we not accessing that so that our students can actively go to the program? Because last year it was highlighted that they were bringing our students to the program. Just want to know why it's not happening, and if so, how do we make it happen so that we can fully empower Ms. Taylor to do what she's trying to do?
Great question. And so the smart mobility credits came up before when we were talking about seniors. We are actively working to go through our procurement processes so that we can be in alignment with all of the requirements of the city charter so that we can put those credits to productive use, not only for seniors, but for the youth as well.
Are there any more questions for Ms. Taylor? Going once? Going twice? Just before we close out, I want to tell you that you're doing an amazing job. And even when you're asked the hard questions, you give the truth and transparency. And for me, that means a great deal. So thank you for the service that you do. Thank you for the late hours that you stay up. And thank you for answering the questions and giving me the truth. So for that, I appreciate you.
You're welcome.
All right. Upcoming public hearing on the 2023-24 fiscal year postponed budget on May the 30th at 6 p.m. At this time, do we have anybody for public comment? Going once, going twice, 3 times if you're nice. Seeing none, we have no one for public comment. I asked if I can get a motion to adjourn.
It's moved.
It was moved by Councilman Parker. It was seconded by Councilman Nicholson. Roll call.
James,
Yes.
Nicholson,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Rutherford.
Yes, we are adjourned at 7:32. Have a great evening.